Good evening and welcome to the Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting for September 27th, 2018. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 5th, 2018. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the Municipal Building on January 5th, 2018. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 5th, 2018.
Thank you. Would you please stand for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Selin?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Here.
Mayor Ritter?
Here. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda this evening?
So moved.
Well, Your Honor, we had a couple of questions. First of all, regarding our terrific fellas in blue here and the accreditation. I don't see that on our agenda. But also, as we attend to that, we have an item on the consent agenda appointing Police Lieutenant Christopher Slayton. So I'm wondering if we can remove Christopher Slayton's appointment from the consent agenda up to piggyback with our accreditation. Is that,
Albert nods his head. We can do that.
can I make that motion?
Is there a motion to remove Resolution 2018-167, appointing police lieutenant, out of the consent agenda to a separate item to be discussed and voted on?
I will make that
Is
motion.
there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
And where are you putting it on the agenda?
We're going to put it on reports after just, what do you want to do? Do it before reports?
Let's do it before
Let's do it before
reports.
reports. How's that? We'll do it before reports, Albert.
Is that all right with you,
Is
Albert?
that good?
Okay.
Moving on then, we've got Resolution 2018-167, a resolution of the Township of Chatham, Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, appointing Christopher Slayton Lieutenant in the Chatham Township Police Department. Now this is kind of the formality of it. We're going to, once approved, we'll do the swearing in at the next ceremony. We'll sing your accolades and all the other things, but this is obviously a great honor. Last week, or last meeting, we approved the appointment of former Lieutenant Miller to now Chief Miller, and so this is a distinct pleasure and honor to introduce this resolution promoting Sergeant Slayton to soon-to-be Lieutenant. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Selin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. So formally, congratulations, but we'll do the formal swearing in at the next meeting. Moving on to the next item. Moving on to the next item, we have Dr. Harry Delgado of the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police, who is here to, he's here somewhere, right? There he is in the back. Here to speak about the accreditation of the police department. I don't know if Chief Miller, you want to say anything beforehand, or?
I'll wait till you.
Okay, very good. So, Doctor, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm here representing the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police and the New Jersey Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission. And I'd like to share with you, if you indulge me for a couple of minutes, the significance of the achievement of the Chatham Township Police Department, and certainly Chief Miller, who in his role as accreditation manager had a lot, if not everything, to do with it. So I was in a conversation I mentioned before that there's potentially over 560 law enforcement agencies that would be eligible to apply for accreditation. So to date, there's about 39% have actually achieved it and made it through the rigorous program. But when you come to reaccreditation, which is what the Chatham Police Department has achieved, it's only 8% of the law enforcement agencies in New Jersey have achieved reaccreditation. So they definitely now join a very elite group of law enforcement agencies in the state of New Jersey that have achieved the reaccreditation. And so that we understand what they've actually done. Accreditation is a process. It takes 3 years for this process of accreditation. And the foundation of accreditation lies in the adoption of standards containing a clear statement of professional objectives. In the state of New Jersey, 105 standards, many of which require various proofs of compliance. Accreditation is a progressive and time-proven way of helping law enforcement agencies calculate and improve their overall performances. It is a certification by an independent authority, in this case the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police, that the accredited agency was carefully measured against an established set of state and national standards, and in the case of the Chatham Police Department, has met, in many instances, exceeded accepted practices in the field of law enforcement. Briefly, I'll say accredited agencies are better able to defend against lawsuits and citizens' complaints. Accreditation provides objective evidence of an agency's commitment to excellence in leadership, resource management, and service delivery. Government officials can be more confident in the agency's ability to operate efficiently and meet community needs. And accreditation embodies, and this is very special in the township, in Chatham Township, the precepts of community-oriented policing. They have one of the best models in the state when it comes to community policing. It creates a forum which they know very well, in which police and citizens work together to prevent and control challenges confronting law enforcement and provide clear direction about community expectations. Accreditation standards, give the chief a proven management system of written directive, sound training, clearly defined lines of authority, and routine reports that support decision-making and resource allocation. And finally, as I see many present here tonight, officers in accredited agencies are able to take pride that they have been recognized for the professionalism and adherence to the highest standards in law enforcement today. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of the notations made by the assessors when they came to visit the Chatham Police Department in this final on-site assessment, where they need to show tangible proof of the many to the 105 standards in New Jersey. So they noted, and I'll say briefly, the agency implemented the community policing model. To date, and in my personal experience, one of the best in the state. This is an excellent example of an innovative way to bridge the gap between the agency and the people of the service population. It allows residents to put a human face to the agency and encourages all officers to take ownership of community concerns. The members of the Chatham Township Police Department agency are proud of their relationship with the community, the school system, and neighboring law enforcement agencies. Programs such as LEAD, the anti-drug education in the school district, and Neighborhood Watch programs will expand the reach of law enforcement by investing public awareness and involvement. The agency hopes to leverage the power of technology and community involvement to enhance their ability to protect the residents of Chatham Township. So the Chatham Township Police Department is a professional organization with disciplined and well-trained personnel. The agency has a strong organizational culture consistent with their experience in the accreditation process. They adhere to national and state best practices. Their leadership is progressive and forward-thinking. The high level of competence, leadership, and professionalism is evident within the agency. So the Chatham Township Police Department, under the direction of Chief Thomas Miller, has achieved reaccreditation, demonstrating his commitment to maintaining its accredited status among all law enforcement agencies in the state of New Jersey. So finally, it is the opinion of the assessment team that the Chatham Township Police Department is a highly professional and committed agency which exemplifies all of the tenets of law enforcement accreditation at the state and national level. So it is indeed my pleasure tonight, on behalf of the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police and the New Jersey Law Enforcement Commission, to congratulate Chief and Accreditation Manager Thomas Miller, the members of the Chatham Township Police Department, the mayor, the council, and those citizens that they so proudly serve for achieving their reaccreditation, joining a very exclusive group of law enforcement agencies that have made this commitment to excellence in policing. So to all, congratulations. Chief.
I just want to thank Dr. Harry Delgado for those kind words. I'd also like to thank the mayor and council for allowing us to achieve this monumental task. And a special thank you to the men and women of the Chatham Township Police Department for all that they have done to make this a success. Thank you.
So, Chief, I just want to, acknowledge this as well. I mean, this is no small feat. Sir, I recall the first time when you went through this process, the hours that you spent with all the other members of the department to put this thing together, and it was such a significant achievement. And now here in the reaccreditation, it sounds like it was no small feat in its own right as well. So I commend you and the department entirely for all your hard work. I can't say we're so proud of what you guys do for our town, being on the front lines, as it were. You've got our full faith and support for all that you do, protecting our citizens. It's one of the reasons why Chatham Township remains one of the safest towns in all of New Jersey and the United States itself. So your innovative thinking that you brought to the department and the hard work that all of you do on behalf of the entire committee. In fact, on behalf of all of our citizens, our residents here in Chatham Township, I just want to say thank you for all that you guys do. Truly appreciate everything you've done for us. So thank you and congratulations. And do you want to make mention? I know you've got Coffee with the Cop coming up. Do you want to give a little plug
Yes,
for that?
October 4th. If Sergeant Pappan wants to come up, he is spearheading the Coffee with the Cops on October 4th from 9 to 11 in the community center, the community room at Town Hall.
Sergeant, you want to say a few words about?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're looking to do a little more into with the community and meet and greets and stuff like that. So we're going to try this next week, and then we're going to do it probably every couple months after that until it gets to be a routine. So get more and more people out here. So
Fantastic. And again, I think it's a very innovative way of getting you guys in front of the citizens and vice versa. So appreciate you guys taking the initiative to do this. So thank you very much. Moving on to other reports. We'll start with Typhoon.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Mike.
Just briefly, Mayor, the DPW is grateful that they dodged the bullet in the recent storms with reports of towns like Bayonne having serious flooding and even as nearby as Summit having some trees down and suspected tornadic activity there. But here in Chatham Township, we've certainly have our share of rain. We're behind schedule still on the crosswalk painting, and we try to get that done before the start of school, but the weather conditions have just slowed that down. Playing fields are being done when as weather permits, and we had a letter going out to residents just this past week reminding them about the easements behind some properties on steep slopes, just to remind them to please not allow leaves and grass clippings to collect in those storm drain easements, and please be considerate of people downslope from them. So just a reminder on that. And then just a note of appreciation. You probably already noticed the chrysanthemums that the DPW planted at the foot of Buxton, right at the corner of Fairmount Avenue and Southern Boulevard. They're a real nice touch, and thank you very much for dressing up the town. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Kevin?
Sure. Board of Library trustees met. Obviously, they're still in the middle of their fundraising effort. Their campaign, Bridging Space to Places. So they've raised about $550,000 to date. Several hundred members of the community, and that's both community of the Chathams, Library of the Chathams, have contributed. Next year, probably early in the spring, there'll be a construction bond act, Library Construction Bond Act went into effect. The parameters of it are still not public, but it'll probably be early next year. Your available grants are up to 50% of available funding that you have on hand. So just want to encourage everyone to go to the website, Library of Chathams. It's chathamlibrary.org. And click on the Bridging Spaces to Place and donate if you haven't already. We did send out a townwide mailer, and the results were very good, but the more broader contributors, the stronger the grant application. So just want to encourage everyone, if they can give something, to give. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Karen?
All right, very good. Mostly I have a couple of save the date items. First of all, our senior center shred event on October 20th, Saturday, coming up. Please circle the date on your calendar. It's not immediate, but we will be announcing it. It's such a great public service and a great, obviously a great cause to donate to. October 20th, Saturday morning, 9 to noon. That will be at Lafayette Avenue School. And just along the matters of public safety, we do have Fire Prevention Week coming up. That is October 7th through 13th. Our Green Village Fire Company will be kicking it off with an open house on October 7th. That is going to be from 1 to 3 p.m. It's always great to stop by Green Village and see what they've got going on over there with their fire company. And Chatham Township Volunteer Fire Department in and of themselves will be having also a traditional open house. So please visit them both on Facebook and keep tabs on them on our Chatham Township website. etc. Chatham Township Fire Department is also seeking vendors for their holiday open house, which is to be held on November 16th. All those things you can visit at ctfd.org. And that's what I got.
Great, thank you. Just a couple items on my end. First is I want to thank everyone who participated in the suicide walk, the Out of the Darkness walk we hosted last Saturday, our third annual. We raised nearly $60,000, bringing our three-year total to over $200,000 for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Well over 300 walkers were in attendance. So I just want to thank everyone here in the committee who was there and those residents who came out to participate as well. A tremendous event, and it's doing our part to help stop suicide. The second item, we just want to remind residents that our train shuttle service survey is still open. It's going to be open until October 4th, so if you haven't already, please go online to the Chatham Township website, click on the link and take the survey. Just following up with Mike's comment regarding DPW and the beautification, as it were, of the corner of Fairmont and Southern Boulevard there. Thank you very much again. This is part of our initiative to try to beautify some of the islands we have in town. We're going to look and see what we can do at the bottom of Snake Hill as well to do something there to make it a little bit more attractive, as it were. And that's all I have on my end. Go to you, John.
Thank you, Mayor. We have completed or substantially completed a lot of the 2008 paving program. The roads that remain to be paved is a portion of Woodlawn, and we're waiting on drainage improvements to be completed on that. I don't have a firm date from the contractor when he's going to mobilize, but I am working with him and it should be shortly. The paving of Woodlawn will likely be postponed to the spring, depending on how quickly the construction goes. We do want to allow some of the trench to settle. We don't want to pave it too soon and then get some on the new paving. So that'll likely be scheduled for a spring paving. The other roads that we have not paved was basically in the Lenape Trail neighborhood. We still have some drainage work to do on Yarmouth, and we also have some work to do on Lenape. On Lenape, we did receive bids on doing curb work. We received, I reported before, but we did receive one bid. The bid was very high, and we rejected it because it was just above the engineer's estimate. I just received bids in another town, the borough of Apacon, for a curb and sidewalk project, and we didn't receive any bids. So it's a little concerning that, well, it's a good thing, I guess, for the economy. The contractors are busy, so when they're targeting, looking at when we would rebid this project, I'm thinking that we rebid it more in the winter time when contractors are slow, they're looking for work. We'll get more bids, we'll get more competitive bids because they're less work, and so I think Lenape is really going to be postponed to a spring project to refocus on doing that.
That's for the curbing in and of itself.
Correct.
Right, John? Right.
Correct. And the remaining roads of Falmouth and Plymouth, it's a short road. It's difficult to get the contractor in just for a small quantity, so we're just going to pave that when the entire neighborhood is ready and just schedule that work at that time. So we're going to try to advance that work as fast as we can and just complete that for likely in the spring. Even Woodlawn even if that's ready, it's a small section. We need to pave it with other roads. It's really difficult to get the contractor in just for that small section.
So that whole area is going to be postponed until springtime?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Are we communicating this to the residents to give them a heads up, just so they know and
yeah,
question?
On we have been we can give them update. I have been updated during the whole paving project. We put notices out regularly. We were updating the website daily to keep notices, and that was always identified as pending additional road work. And so the dates were never out there as when it was actually going to be done. But we'll give them more indication that it's not going to be happening this year.
I think also what happens when you start talking about road improvements in a neighborhood, all of a sudden you are given increased awareness to problems that exist that you may not know otherwise. And I think that having spoken to residents about paving projects that are going on, all of a sudden the hands go up saying, have you taken a look into this matter and that? And that's why also the issue with Lenape Trail, perhaps the issue with Plymouth Road has also come up, Yarmouth, in that regard.
It's a balance,
Right.
because certainly all the roads, frankly, have subsurface drainage if they were built today to today's standards. But we do focus on those areas where we get complaints, where we can accommodate and try to improve on things.
Yeah.
But certainly, like, those are, like you said, are perfect examples where we're just trying to improve the conditions before we just simply mill and pave. We want to, because after we're done with this, we certainly don't want to revisit a road for at least 20 years plus. So we want to be done. Lastly, I know there was an article in the paper from the borough, and then there was also, I know, some emails to the committee regarding the infamous fatberg that was found. And we did have a blockage in the township sewer system by an easement between Rolling Hill and Dale. It was not an area that we typically have a problem. It was a kind of a surprise to see some blockage at that location. I don't know if it was a fatberg, as they refer to it, but it was reported to be a substantial amount of grease. And basically, when grease is deposited, it slowly just deposits along the side of the pipe and ultimately just reduces the cross-sectional area to a point where it starts to create a blockage. Historically, we have not had a problem with blockage. Our sewer system has been installed for at least 50 years, and over that 50 years, we've learned where we have areas that are more prone to blockage or require more frequent maintenance, more frequent inspections, and we do. We have certain roads that we know we have to go out on a regular basis and clean them more frequently and do that. So we have monitoring. This particular location over on Rolling Hill and Dale, that was a surprise, regarding the amount of grease accumulation, because usually you don't have a significant amount of grease configuration in an area that's primarily single-family homes. You usually get the grease accumulation related to commercial established restaurants, and even though they have grease traps, you still get breakout, and so usually that's right. So that was a surprise. So we are going to monitor that location more closely, just to make sure that hopefully it doesn't turn into enforcement, or enforcement may just be we may just look at that neighborhood and see where that sewer, what the amount of homes that collect, and maybe we do just a quick newsletter to let people, remind people that we do have sewer ordinance, we do have prohibitions on what you can put in the sewer, and just kind of remind people that
John, if you have that information, it might be helpful to post it on our website and our Facebook page as well.
Absolutely.
So if you have to just send it through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hidden in our code book, but we can bring that out and just kind of put something on there just to alert people to the sensitivity. We don't have a major problem or issue regarding blockage. Like I said, we get very few blockages. This is the first one that's been in years that we've heard of one.
Should residents do anything preemptively? I mean, is there a way of putting something down the drain itself to potentially unclog stuff that's there, or just?
They can certainly do certain things because basically from every single property you have a 4-inch pipe that goes into typically an 8-inch pipe. We have larger pipes for our artery system, but basically it's going to an 8-inch pipe. So whatever you dump out of a single family, by the time it gets to the 8-inch pipe, it's so diluted it's not going to be an issue. But certainly we do have, a lot of times we will get calls for blockage, and it's not our pipe, but it's actually on their own. And so, discharging, wet wipes and other things in their own sewer, in their own system, it creates more problems for themselves versus our municipal system. So it's certainly good to put that awareness out there, to be sensitive. Not just, you're not just going to impact the municipal system, but you're going to impact your own. And those are some things, and those are ultimately, unfortunately, homeowners responsible to get a contractor jet their own lines and do that. But it is something actually that's probably more frequent than the mains itself. The mains, we don't usually get blockage. We maintain the system well, and like I said, this one was a surprise, so we're going to monitor that more closely. People can be proactive, not proactive, but if you really want to be very, do something precautionary, and you can install a backflow preventer on your lines, but that's something it's not common typically in a municipal system or a public system. It is common when you have situations where houses are in a flood zone, and then all of a sudden, if there's a flood, the sewers flood, and that surcharge can back up into the homes And that's common to do it at those locations. I know that Denville and Cranford, other municipalities that I work in, that's in certain neighborhoods, that's actually, standard practice to put those in. But, I don't think it's a necessity of people to run out. There isn't an immediate, really, the system is working fine. So.
Great.
John, thanks a lot for staying on top of that. I know when people see things in the news, people tend to get concerned about whether this is a situation that's going to erupt in their own neighborhood. So knowing that you were able to be ready with that information and also to be able to respond to our residents' needs, I think that's so critical. I think it did create some concern, and it should create some concern. People need to know what's going on. And it's also really comforting to know that you have a handle on the whole thing. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, John. Great. Rich, Chief, anything else? All right, we'll move on to the hearing of citizens. Opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for hearing tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. All right, seeing no one come forward, we'll close at the hearing of citizens. We have our first introduction of an ordinance 2018-18, regarding temporary certificate of occupancy guarantee. Albert, would you like to provide some color on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Earlier this year, the municipal land use... Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier this year, the municipal land use law was changed. The specific portion that was changed dealt with the performance guarantees that a builder or a developer would have to post with the municipality. So this ordinance is a revision to the performance guarantee provisions of your land use code to make it consistent with state law. I view it more as a technical requirement. That's what the municipal land use law now says, and you have to get in conformance with that. So that is what is before you. There are some changes in the things that are bondable. The changes have lessened the ability of the municipality to require more bondable items, but it does now provide for a landscape bond when the landscaping is not completed and a CO is requested. It also allows for a restoration bond, and it allows for the posting of a temporary certificate of occupancy pending some final completion items. So it's really, as I said, a technical change in your ordinance to make it consistent with state law. And it basically, for the most part, tracks the statute.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Albert? Any discussion?
Albert, I just have a question. Is there anything on here that becomes more onerous to somebody putting an addition on their home or to a builder doing an addition before the CO is issued?
This amendment to the municipal land use law was driven by the builders lobby. So that I think that answers your question. Okay, I think if you speak with Mr. Rushke as a municipal engineer, he'll say to you, this is not good legislation for a municipality because it's in the short time it's been in effect, I think it's created more problems than it's solved as towns work through this. But it's primarily builder friendly.
So would you estimate that we have to be on the lookout for safety issues more than before or anything of that sort?
No, because these things deal more with public improvements. They don't deal with the structure itself, but you should always be vigilant.
Right, thank you, Albert. Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second.
Mr. Selene?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
And in order to give the planning board time to review for master plan consistency, the public hearing will be scheduled for October 25th.
Thank you very much. Next item up, we've got the consent agenda. Greg, you want to read those off for us, please?
This evening, we have Resolution 2018-162, receipt of reports, 2018-163, approving meeting minutes, 2018-164, approving executive session minutes, 2018-165, refunding third-party police escrow, 2018-166, releasing escrow balances, and 2018-168, accepting snow plowing services proposal.
Thank you. Any questions on the consent agenda? Discussion? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Solen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Swartz?
Yes?
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Next up, we have two discussion items. The first is the New Jersey DOT grant application, which I'll ask John to give us a little background on and the proposals for the grant itself, and then we can open it up for discussion among the committee members.
The New Jersey Department of Transportation has a municipal aid grant program to assist municipalities in maintaining roads and sidewalks and transportation features. This grant, we apply for it every year. We've been very successful over the years for both sidewalk and paving projects. The most recent grant was paving the Long Hill neighborhood, and so that was complete. Most municipalities will focus on paving for this grant, but it does accommodate sidewalks. The DOT, I believe they allocate at least 5% of the funds allocated for the municipal aid towards specifically towards sidewalks. And like I said, we have been successful with a number of projects for sidewalks. So either a sidewalk or resurfacing project, we've had success in both. This year, there was two projects that are being considered for the committee. One is installing new sidewalks on Fairmont Avenue. It would be between Southern Boulevard and Long Hill Avenue. That would be new construction, and I did send out notices to all the homeowners just to make them aware that we were going to have a discussion item tonight that if they had any concerns. I had some residents contact me. At least two were favorable and support the project, and at least three, I believe, didn't render an opinion either or, just had a ton of questions regarding the details. And I just explained to the residents that this is a very preliminary stage. We're just looking at discussing a project. Those specific details are worked out if the project does move forward, and just indicate that they are, residents are always, consulted from the very beginning and getting input. And so that's the feedback that I've received. The sidewalk is identified in the 2009 walkway bikeway master plan element as a location for a proposed sidewalk. The second location was a paving project, and we focused on the Sandy Hill neighborhood, looking at our overall plan of how we've been sequencing the paving. This neighborhood was last attended to in 2010 when we did micropaving, and when following what the sequence is, it's about time for this to be the resurfacing. The timing is right. We did the micropaving to extend that life of that road to a point where we can now resurface it. And so that location is basically that entire neighborhood. For the paved resurfacing project, the total cost is approximately $390,000. That's a high. Usually what we typically try to do is get a project in the 200, 250 range, and then ask for 80% of the funding, because the DOT has a point system how they rank projects. They don't share that with you, but doing this over the 20 years, I kind of get a feel, and just talking to them informally, they give you an indication of what to look for in a project and how they rank it, and if you're putting your foot in the game and putting some funding up forward, you do get points for that, and so we usually go for 80% of the project. In this case, this was an area that we would target anyway, even if the grant wouldn't have went forward. So we just suggesting, Tom and I suggested just applying for the whole neighborhood, and we'll likely request 200,000 because that's on the top end of what you typically get under these municipal aids. They do like to spread the grant money and supply it to as many municipalities as they can, so they don't typically fund projects greater than that. So that's where the target would be. For the sidewalk project, the project is approximately $400,000. I included, it is a bit intense on some of the work that's involved, especially at the corner at Southern and Fairmont. We have the church, we have a steep grade. That's going to require a retaining wall in order to make that ADA compliant, and then also giving some of the site features that are along that to make sure that we address all the concerns of the residents properly, that we make sure that we're requesting adequate funding to cover that. Again, you know, if we request 400 for this project, we're not going to receive it because they don't provide that much funding under this program. So again, ask for about 200 because that's usually on the top end of what they typically give. So both projects we're looking at, it's larger projects, looking for requesting funding in the 200,000 range, and so we have the two options.
200 or just 200?
200,000. Sorry.
That's it.
Yeah, 200,000. Yep, 200,000.
So will this be an either or, John, after we get sort of a little bit of public feedback on which one is more desirable or less controversial, or?
The DOT does not encourage multiple submittals,
Right.
only because the project you rank first is going to get the majority of the points, and it's unlikely that the second project will ever be funded. And so it's usually one or the other as being, what needs to be done is one or the other needs to be a priority. And we can certainly, it's not a comprehensive application to submit, we can certainly submit one as a second, but it's highly unlikely that the second would be funded.
And is it appropriate to file one this year and one next year and say these are both needs that we see in Chatham Township, or do we do this every year? We have these sequential grants lined up in the hopper, so to speak?
Well, what I have done in the past is submitted 2 applications, and this happened many years ago, but the DOT is trying to fund a certain amount of sidewalks under this grant program, and most municipalities do go for resurfacing and paving. One year I did have the DOT call me, and they identified that, hey, that's a great project, we really would love to fund it, but you identified it as your second, and there's no way you're going to get funding for a second. If you reverse your priorities, I think you might get funding for that. And I did, and we got funding. So would that happen again? Is that common practice? I don't think so, but it did happen to me once. And so, certainly if we do submit to, that could happen, that no one else submits for a sidewalk project, and you'll get that call because they want to fund at least 5% of the projects in sidewalks.
So the way you present is that the project is $390,000 and you ask for a grant for $200,000 portion of it, and if you get the $200,000, can you just spend only $200,000, or you have to spend 190 from your pocket?
The DOT frowns upon you changing the project limits because they're reviewing a project based on point A to point B. This is the project. This is the merits of your application that you're going to complete this project. So if you turn around and say, okay, you only gave us 200. We said we were going to spend 400. You only get 200. Now we're going to cut it in half. They're not going to look. They're not going to look very positive on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. I should just make mention, you talked about some emails you received. I actually received a couple of emails as well. One is from the head of the Safe Routes to School Committee, who met, I believe, last Friday and discussed this with their group, and they fully support the creation of these sidewalks on Fairmont there. We talked about public safety and certainly providing sidewalks where people can walk safely out of harm's way in the roadway from one end of town to the center of Chatham Borough to the train station itself. Would certainly support that initiative itself. Also, the Historical Society, some members there expressed an interest in the sidewalk. Again, creating greater access or accessibility to the Red Schoolhouse, which is across the street from the sidewalk that's being proposed. So I actually was one who introduced this the idea of this grant to the sidewalk. I know some folks are in favor of it, some folks may not necessarily be in favor of it, but I said we've got another grant going in that's already been submitted, redoing the macadam on the walkway on Fairmont here from one end up to Southern Boulevard. I think it only makes natural sense for us to continue the sidewalk through to Chatham Borough to increase, again, the accessibility for people walking to and from the train station or just walking from one end of town to the center of Chatham Borough and Main Street. Again, as it relates to public and pedestrian safety, I fully support proposing that we submit the application for the sidewalks.
So John, if I can ask a question, this is the only grant where you can get paving money, right? This is the grant that only, the federal grants don't allow paving.
Yeah, the federal grants, the Safe Routes to Schools is primarily your sidewalk projects, those large sidewalk. Your TAP grants, that's more for streetscape, unique, you can't apply for resurfacing and that.
Right.
So this is the primarily grant availability for funding for resurfacing.
So we've obviously been on this aggressive road paving program for quite some time. Being this is the only grant, we could complete an entire neighborhood, Rolling Hills West, if you want to call it that, Sandy Hill area, with this grant, potentially. Obviously not funding all of it, but less than the cost of the sidewalk. As I walk around town, we have, and obviously the impetus to redo and fix up the existing Fairmont sidewalk, which is in much repair, and I think it will improve the values of the homes there and the streetscape along the way, and particularly at the sidewalk where the township owns land and there is no sidewalk. It kind of goes dry there, which is kind of odd. So I think that's certainly a good use of grant money and a good project. But as I said before, there's a number of sidewalks, even along Glenmere, that would lead to this sidewalk that are in desperate, not Glenmere, I'm sorry, Southern, obviously down towards Glenmere and the rest of Southern, not to mention River Road. There are sidewalks on River Road, believe it or not, that are in desperate repair. My concern is it's you know, you keep adding sidewalks but you don't take care of what's behind you. You know, I think we have to take care of the infrastructure that we presently have and make an evaluation on really what's needed. I know 100% of the people love their streets to be paved. I haven't run into anyone who doesn't like their street being paved, yet anyway. And we've paved a lot of streets, but there still are a lot more streets that could use paving. We did about 80% as well in Wickham Woods, but there's still some streets there that we've taken care of a lot of the drainage problems. So paving is certainly still a priority, should be a priority for us. It's the only place we can get paving money from the grant process, which saves the taxpayers money, saves us money, and obviously it's utilized by many people traversing town. So I think when you have this situation, I've also, a couple of people have reached out that they're concerned about the sidewalk in front of their house for a variety of different reasons. An elderly woman reached out to me verbally. I've got a couple emails that I've shared with the committee. An elderly woman reached out to me verbally and is concerned about a sidewalk in front of her house on that street and what it might mean to her as an elderly person, people walking up and down that street, where she doesn't see that now and is a little bit concerned from a safety perspective. And that was her concern, so I'll just share that with the rest of the committee. So there seems to be some people who want it, some people who don't. I've talked to Albert, we've all talked to Albert about the fact that we have yet to really define when a sidewalk is wanted by the residents and how to put an ordinance in place that provides an assessment for that desire, and when it's dictated by the town, so to speak, for public safety reasons or whatever the reason might be. And we still have yet to kind of introduce that and figure out what the right mechanism is for that. And also it leads into a lot of questions about other ordinances revolving around maintenance with sidewalks. So I think my point, the ultimate point that I'm trying to get to is 100% of the people love their streets paved. Some people want it, sidewalks, some people don't. I think there should be an overwhelming sense of this committee and the community that if we're putting in new sidewalks, that there's a strong purpose for it. And I think that's what we all have to weigh here, whether or not there is in this case, and what makes better sense. For me, I like smooth roads, but in this case. And I do think we do need to spend more grants focusing on the existing infrastructure we have and bringing it up to better standards, so to speak.
Anyone else have a comment?
John, that section of Fairmount Avenue can be hazardous. I've walked that section without the sidewalk, and with the broken shoulder and the speed and the volume of the traffic, I'd have to agree. It's an area to look at, and certainly has some purpose as well with the church and the museum, and the fact that it heads to Longwood, the top of Longwood, and the schools are down Longwood. So I see the purpose of it there. Has there been any communication with Chatham Borough? Because if we now have an existing sidewalk on the length of Fairmount, really from the country store to Southern Boulevard already, and are looking to repair that, and now we're talking about extending it from Southern Boulevard to the town border at Longwood, there is a gap beyond that in Chatham Borough where there is no sidewalk. I mean, if they haven't conveyed to you that that's on their long-range plan, I think it would behoove us to share this information with them and see what feedback they give us. That if the purpose is to improve connectivity, I think that it would help us to know whether they have it on a 1-year plan or a 5-year plan, or for some reason no plan at all, because they have an existing sidewalk that comes out, but it stops a couple hundred yards short of their side of Longwood Avenue. So I'd be interested in, if you could reach out, if you haven't already, to...
Yeah, I actually reached out to Len Resto, who also connected with Jim Cullender over there, who's the head of their, I guess, public safety committee, and I know they are reviewing the option. This grant needs to be submitted by, I think, October 4th, if I'm not mistaken, or sometime in early October. I have not heard back from them in terms of whether or not they are submitting a grant on behalf of this, but we do know that Chatham Borough is very active in the urban sidewalk initiative, getting more people in town to, in the borough at least, certainly utilize sidewalks and walk around the town. So I would certainly suspect, given the fact that they already have an existing sidewalk leading up to, I don't think it's several hundred yards, probably, maybe not even 100. I don't know what that distance is, but it's pretty short amount of space, or distance, I should say, from where this sidewalk would end and the borough one would continue.
John, Mike, if I could just follow up on something. John, when you put aside, because Mike makes a good point about that road, obviously, it's a difficult intersection. We've all talked about that, how to navigate it. The other, we're talking about public safety, but we might be missing the point of we might be driving people towards the worst intersection, not driving, but walking towards the worst intersection in town. But to Mike's point about that road, when you do a sidewalk on a road like that, just assuming the right-of-way goes in, let's say, we know how the right-of-way works off the center line, but just say 10 feet off the road. Do you go in deeper onto a property line because of the potential, you don't want a sidewalk like that right up against a busy road like that, where it's a county road? Do you?
Yeah, we would work out the details with the residents. I think our primary approach would be to try to have a reasonable grass strip, similar to what they have on the borough, to have that continuously go through. In many cases, when you're trying to retrofit a sidewalk into an existing situation like this, it's extremely difficult. Sometimes we have to go down to 2 feet. If we go down less than 2 feet, or put the sidewalk against the curb, the sidewalk has to be a minimum of 5 feet wide. So, I have, in circumstances, to put sidewalks right against the curb, because that's all you can do. It's you don't have right of way, or it's just too much of an impact. Even on Southern Boulevard, we have some areas where the sidewalk is right against the curb.
So I have a question though. I mean, it's nice to have sidewalks, obviously, it's safe for people to walk and everything, but just two questions I have. Now, you know when landscaping people, the landscaping companies park their big trucks in the road, and if there are two landscaping trucks on both sides of the road, and you're, driving on that road, it's even becoming more like dangerous. But the question is this: would the road be any narrower because of this, or will we get from the properties, people's properties? So which one?
We have to maintain minimum minimum widths that meet the county standards. So we will not be reducing the road to below that standard.
So you're taking from the people's property a little bit.
We stay within the right of way.
It's in the right.
The only time that we would look at obtaining an easement, there are some large trees, and that's going to be an issue too. That when we go to, if this does go forward, and we have to, start doing some preliminary design, there's some very large trees that if we want to preserve, it's going to push the sidewalk far into some of the homes, and we're going to
So that's one question.
push those homeowners to get easements. It's going to be similar like on Lafayette, similar situation where we have a couple of larger trees that we're going to have. It would be a challenge just to work with the residents.
Okay. Now, second question is probably for you. Who's responsible to maintain those sidewalks once we build them? Now, I don't know, maybe that's for you. So.
We don't have our
Well,
ordinance.
that goes to Mr. Sullivan's
Yeah, who's
point.
going to maintain it?
That's Mr. Sullivan's point.
Yeah.
You haven't reached a consensus yet on that issue.
Not only like snow removal, there are other things, if it's broken, who's going to fix it?
That's Mr. Sullivan's point.
Well, basically, we do not have shoveling laws. So, you can't very well plop a sidewalk down on somebody's property and say, here's your sidewalk that you didn't want, now shovel it. That's kind of tough.
Well, it's not saying everyone doesn't want it, Karen.
That's true.
Right?
No, I
So
understand
don't
that.
speak for all the residents.
I'm not speaking for all the residents.
Well, you said
But
it was
I
a
am
blanket
saying,
statement
I
there.
am saying that if people aren't requesting sidewalks, now you give them a sidewalk and tell them that they've got to maintain it. People may want the sidewalk.
Yeah, entirely.
Right? Sure. So in either case, we do not have a provision in the township that requires people to maintain their walkways. And, that's obviously a concern too. And John, with all due respect, when you say now we're going to have a situation like Lafayette, we want to avoid a situation like Lafayette because that,
Well, I
this
think when you
is
live
a
in a town like
situation.
this where there are trees all around, there's really no way to avoid situations where we have trees in the line of way.
Right.
I mean, it's the
But I
nature
just
of the
think
beast
this
here.
is a situation that requires an abundant amount of communication before we decide to go and send off a request to the DOT to come and put us. I think we need to hear from a lot of people.
But we put notices out to all the residents. We'll hear from the residents this evening or anyone else who wants to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
We've received emails from individuals, different committees, different organizations. John has, committee members have. We've expressed those publicly here tonight. That's why we have these forums.
Right.
Is there a way
Exactly.
that we can do a survey monkey that we did for the other,
Well, you're talking about 20 homes, right?
20
You're talking about 20 homes, you're talking about
But
20,
that's-
They were all contacted.
they're 20 residents.
That's probably more than 20. I mean, 20 homes in front of, we're talking about sidewalks in front of 20 homes.
Mm-hmm.
But people will be walking, it's probably maybe
Right.
hundreds.
Sure.
Like,
And from a public
know.
safety perspective, does it add to or detract from public safety? Are you introducing foot traffic in an area where perhaps foot traffic?
Well, I
It's
think hopefully you
dangerous.
would introduce foot traffic because that's the purpose of
Right, but it's a
creating
40 mile an hour road.
walkable community. I already see people walking from to and from the train station,
It's terrifying.
on the sidewalk,
As
not even
Michael
on the roadway
Right.
at night. And God forbid we had the incident over on, what was it?
Shunpike.
Over on Shunpike, where it was dark. It wasn't even dark. It was like, well, it was dark. It was dusk. It was like 6:30 at night, rainy, and God forbid.
A man was in the middle of the street, with all due respect.
With all due respect, you couldn't see anything. You drive down the street, any street around Chatham, or any street for that matter, at dusk these days.
There is a sidewalk there, Kurt, to be fair.
What's that?
Where that happened, there was.
Sidewalks, but he was in the middle of the road.
I'm talking about the people I see walking from the train station
Yeah,
at
no,
night.
I know, but the
So-
point you're making.
So the fact of the matter is, if this guy was in the middle of the street, that's one thing. I'm talking about the people right now who are walking in the street because there is no sidewalk.
Because the borough won't share the parking lot.
Right. Well, no, all I'm saying is that it's important to hear from the folks. That's it. I'm
And
sure
we
you
will
agree.
open this up to a public, after we're done with our discussion here, and see if anyone here would like to come forward and speak either in favor of or against of the proposal to submit a grant for the sidewalk.
John, what is the deadline for the grant? Or did that pass already and we're looking at the next
No,
cycle?
we need to make a decision tonight.
I mean, why don't we just
October.
apply for it, and then we'll, you know, we'll.
Well, we did that.
There are two choices on the table.
I mean, we
There's
should
a
apply
choice
for it.
of paving, or there's a choice of the sidewalk. I mean, that's what we're
I
discussing.
mean, do we have to decide which of the one
You have
today?
to decide which is your priority. We can submit both, but you have to identify what priority.
Prior.
And that priority, in all honesty, would likely be the one that's going to be funded. So like I said, I had that situation that happened several years ago, but I can't represent that that would happen again. But
I mean, my personal opinion is that I'm for the sidewalks, but there's a lot of strings attached to it. So a lot of, you know, we have to think through all that. So I don't know if we did that. So I want the sidewalks. That's actually, it's nice to have a walkable community and the kids walk, you know, on the sidewalks instead of on the road. But what comes with it? So that's, I can't just figure it all out right now. So, but if you have to discuss it, or if you have to apply it, I would say apply is equally important for us. I mean, I don't know.
Mike?
John, you mentioned curbs a couple times from inset from the curbs. Are there curbs part of the sidewalk
yeah,
project?
we would propose curves.
Okay, because I got one email from a person who was not wild about sidewalks, but they thought that curbs would actually help some water that was flowing onto their property right now. So that was the
That's
comment.
included in this scope.
Is a curb on that side of Fairmount. Is
It's
that,
included a lot of restoration.
okay. And then,
Removing fences and landscaping, and it does get intense regarding the scope.
and then just to clarify a couple terms, I mean, I think that we talked, a comment was made about putting the sidewalks on people's property. I think we're talking about keeping it in the right of way.
Correct.
And then the word maintenance of a sidewalk, that's under current procedures and policies, that falls on our municipal shoulders, right? I mean, we're not asking anyone to maintain a sidewalk in terms of repairing it or replacing it or anything like that at this point. It's a separate issue on shoveling the sidewalk. And while we don't have a ordinance on requiring shoveling sidewalks, we certainly ask as a civic responsibility and a consciousness on people's parts to please, when they remove snow from their driveway and their sidewalk, their walkway up to the house, that they also please remove the snow from the sidewalk in front of their house to help their neighbors. So that's the difference between maintenance and snow removal, just to differentiate there. And if there's also the Safe Routes to School funding or grant application, why are we not going after the sidewalks on the Safe Route to School and as Kevin is suggesting, go after the paving under this grant program?
We did apply for the Safe Routes to Schools earlier in the year, and we applied for another section of replacement on Shunpike, so that's that, we decided on that. And then we applied for the TAP grant, which does not have to be tied to schools, for Fairmont, replacing those sidewalks, and that's a significant project, and it's not the entire distance. It's from Southern Boulevard to the second Runnymede driveway, or roadway. It's about half, and that half is almost $1 million worth of sidewalk, because there's retaining walls, and it's very intense regarding working out all those driveways and issues with that sidewalk. That is the main, and then we do have, it was actually quite a few people very happy that we applied for that, because they do have the retaining walls in their yard, and they want to get replaced, and it's a major, it's a major going back and forth with the county of who's responsible. But that's only covering that. So our next, the Safe Routes to Schools and the TAP grant, it's every 2 years, and so we're not going to have another grant application in 2020. And those two, the program is slow. We know we still haven't completed our 2016 grant for Lafayette. It's just a very slow slow process. But that program, you can ask for a significant amount of money, and a sidewalk.
That's the Safe Routes to School.
Safe Routes to Schools and the TAP grant. And this, $400,000, that's a lot for a sidewalk. We have not had a sidewalk of this magnitude. The ones that we've done on Shunpike, they were more in the 150 range, and we got 80% of the grant funding.
And which is the 400,000? The one
This one is approximately, I
on
estimate.
Fairmount?
On Fairmount, only because it gets complicated by the church and other locations.
Well, the one on Lafayette Avenue was $800,000, John.
That, again, but that was much, I'm saying that sidewalk projects that we applied for under this program in the past.
Which is a lot longer.
Lafayette.
I don't think Lafayette's a lot longer than this stretch we're talking about here. I think there are at least 20 homes on this stretch of Fairmount. So, and I think the frontages are largely
I was
wider.
comparing this to Shunpike, not that we've had in the past, the last couple of years, we had, and going back 2-4 years, we did receive grant money under this program, and we replaced sidewalks on Shunpike, and so those on Shunpike, those are much smaller projects, different scopes, and this is a large project for this program.
So if we end up with a $400,000 award and this sidewalk ends up costing us $800,000, we can't turn around to them and say, we're going to take the 4 and do half the project. We really didn't mean it. So we're going to be in the hole for the entire $800,000 or whatever it's going to cost.
I don't think my estimate's that far off,
We don't.
No, because, no, honestly, I'm comparing it to Lafayette Avenue with the exception perhaps of the fact that the utility poles, I think, are on the other side of Fairmount as opposed to the prospective side of Fairmount. I think the utility poles are on the other side. So that's one thing with Lafayette Avenue you have to come into contention with. But as far as working around the trees and doing all these other things, I would think that this this application should be similar in scope to the one for Lafayette Avenue.
For Lafayette and this, I walk the site, I look at every single property, and I start to estimate. So it's very specific. So you really can't look at Lafayette, oh, that was 1,000 feet. If this is 1,000 feet, they have to be identical.
Okay.
They're not. I walk it, I look at every, I start to add in costs for tree removal and for moving walls and doing any specialty, if they have pavers, and adding in that additional cost, and even adding for some tree replacements and things, and so they're very specific. So this I'm estimating this to be 400. It's not going to come in at 800. It's going to be close to 400.
So there is a cost. There is a cost, obviously, associated to both these projects.
Oh yeah,
that the township is going to bear.
Yeah.
But in evaluating, we're going to continue to pave roads. So if we don't do Sandy Hill, someday we'll do Sandy Hill, and we will finish that neighborhood. So in essence, you almost can look at this as a something we want versus something we need. We know we're going to continue to pave, right? So somewhere we're going to bear that cost, whether in a future grant or ourselves. And on the sidewalk, there's a cost too, but then it becomes a question of how to, you look at, I'm just saying from a fiscal perspective, I think you have to look at the two a little differently too.
From a fiscal perspective, the amount of engineering that goes into resurfacing is a small fraction compared to the amount of effort that goes into the sidewalks. Because there's a lot more, involvement with surveying, with communication with the residents, and it's a more intense design, and then just the whole coordination.
Yeah, but that's the given. It's no
yeah.
rocket science to figure that out.
You're building a sidewalk, not a new plant.
Yeah.
But it's still.
But one, we know we're going to, my point is, we know we're going to continue to pave roads. That's my point. So here's an opportunity to gather some money that would offset that. And I just want to clarify, one other point was made about the right-of-way. The right-of-way is, Albert, you correct me if I'm wrong, please. The right-of-way is still the property owners. We have the right to go into the right-of-way, but that is the property owner's property.
It is their front lawn.
Yeah.
It's an imaginary line. Property owner thinks that that's their property.
But
It is
they
their
still have
property.
to-
It is their property.
They have to
That's my
maintain
point.
their
When you
property.
take
It's
some
still
of
their
it, then
front
we'll say,
yard.
why are
I just wanted to clarify.
I think it's.
didn't want to make.
I've never heard that described, Albert, that a right-of-way is legally the property owner's property?
Well, it
Depends.
no, it does depend, but generally,
Attorney answer.
unless it's The right-of-way is a public right to use, it's in essence an easement that exists for the public to travel on it and build, and for the public, and for the municipality to build a road on it. But it really depends on where the property line is, whether it's at the curb or to the center line. It's a difficult question to answer without doing some survey work as where the right-of-way is. But generally, a right-of-way is owned by the private property owner. So sometimes there's a curb, but your property really extends beyond the curb.
Is it
That's-
10 feet? Is that the rule of thumb, that the first 10
It-
feet
it-
of your yard
it-
actually belongs to the public use?
You got to look at a survey.
You gotta look at the survey.
Your survey will tell you where the property line is and whether there's right-of-way involved. And you correct me if I'm wrong.
You get way too technical
No.
for this discussion.
No, it is. You have to, you just can't, in other words, you can't just eyeball it.
In my opinion, we should hear from from people more.
Well,
more
at that
people.
point-
I have another question,
Yeah.
John, regarding the fact that this is a county road. At what point do we bring them in for their consultation, right? You can't just go and put a sidewalk in, can you? Do they
The
have,
county is very accommodating. They don't have an issue if you put sidewalks in, as long as they don't have to contribute any money and they don't have to maintain it. Of course.
all right.
So we haven't had any issues with the county. They're accommodating.
So if we put it in, we are not going to turn around and say that's a county road, you maintain it? If we put it
They
in,
make
Chatham
us sign
Township
an
says,
agreement that, going forward, we're responsible for the curb and sidewalk. We take the responsibility of that. Even though it's in their right of way, we take the responsibility of sidewalks and curb.
so the engineering around the Buxton, little white church, little red schoolhouse, all that engineering and everything will be incumbent on Chatham Township.
Yeah, for the, to go.
Right.
forward. Yeah, the county doesn't contribute at all.
Howard, it's appropriate to see if anyone in the audience wants to speak. So we'll open it up if people want to come forward.
And please just state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Councilman and Mr. Mayor. I'm Madeline Boland. I live at 369 Fairmount Avenue, and I am in support of the sidewalk. I believe that it would be very helpful in my sister and I and many other kids who live in this stretch, so we can walk to school. And for us, it's an extremely dangerous intersection if we were to cross it ourselves and to walk on the street, just like the curb of the street. And I live extremely close to the high school where I now attend, and it's just like a 15-minute walk if I choose to walk there, but I can't because I'm not able to cross the street safely and walk across Fairmount safely. And I also believe that this would be a very great addition to our stretch. I think it would be a great way for people on my street to go to the Red Brick Schoolhouse when it's open. So yeah, I'm in support of the sidewalk along with my family.
Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie, are you a high school student?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to commend you and congratulate you and your bravery and coming up and talking to the council. And I had a daughter just graduated. I wouldn't pay her enough to get up there and talk about it. And
Thank you very much.
congratulations and good, good job.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Hello, my name's William Apria. My address 292 Fairmount Avenue. I have the distinct pleasure of being on the corner of Fairmount and Longwood, so I get to host the Welcome to Chatham Township sign, as well as a myriad number of different political signs that folks seem to think is a great place to put them. But that doesn't bother me. I do come here today to support the Sidewalks Initiative. I think it is a great improvement for folks that like to walk up and down Fairmount. I cringe as I watch that each and every day. I think for the safety of my two school-aged children, for my wife and I who do enjoy walking around town, I think the idea of sidewalks is great, and I would urge the committee to support this grant proposal. I would further urge our town engineer to make sure that we consider the beautification of the area as well. So I would like to lend support for Belgian Block to the extent that's possible within the budgetary constraints. But otherwise, I'm very happy to support and lend the support for the sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christopher Jago, live at 318 Fairmount Avenue, and my wife Nancy is here with me, and we both oppose the sidewalk program. I think many of the arguments have been vetted here already. I can add a few points, I think. One, it is not a short distance between Longwood and the borough sidewalks. I go to the train every morning, leave my house on Fairmount Avenue, and that's a long stretch. I think there are other opportunities for people to get downtown other than walking on Fairmount Avenue. Many neighbors, including my own, allow us to walk back through and get on Highland Avenue. There's a very peaceful, easy way to walk to the train station and into Chatham Borough. So putting sidewalks on Fairmount Avenue is not a very good idea, and it's not the only way that you could get people to walk around town and to walk into the township. The second thing I haven't really heard about is the environmental impact. I heard talk about trees. We have a 100-year-old oak tree, which I think is 10 feet from the road. Even if you're not going to cut it down, you'll certainly impact the water it gets. You're certainly going to impact its roots when you start digging. A homeowner needs an environmental plan before he can put up a sidewalk on his own property. The township should have the same burden on it before it puts up impervious surfaces. We don't need any more concrete in Chatham Borough. Chatham Township, I'm sorry. I lived in Chatham Borough for 17 years, and I moved to the township because I wanted more green, open space and less concrete. And I think many other residents of Chatham Township would agree with that. People can walk on the grass. Lots of people walk across my grass if they're avoiding a car or they just don't want to be so close to the road. And many Chatham Township residents, I believe, don't mind having people walk on their grass. I look out my window, I don't see a lot of people walking, and I don't think an anecdote about one or two people walking there is enough to overcome the many negative aspects of a sidewalk. And I just want to reiterate something that I did hear. I walk and run around Chatham Township, and the sidewalks are a disgrace. They're buckled, they're cracked, they're flooded, they're unusable. I take a run down Southern Boulevard, I can't run on the sidewalk because it's so uneven. So the amount, you're going to put in a nice sidewalk for $400,000 and then let it deteriorate because there's no money to fix it. I think that's a bad idea for the people on Fairmount Avenue who live there and for the whole township to have a disgrace like that. I would like to have more public vetting of this idea before the committee votes to apply for this grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come forward? Any further discussion from the committee? Is there a consensus in terms of to propose the sidewalks versus the paving or the sidewalk?
So, my
Paving.
consensus, I think you know my consensus.
Paving.
Paving.
I think from a financial perspective, I'd rather see us apply for money for something we know we're going to need. To apply for a grant for something we know we're going to need, we know we're going to spend anyway. If we're definitely going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on paving streets, and we can get some help back from the Department of Transportation that we so richly fund in our largesse as a township. We're always talking about getting no money back from our governments. You know, if we can apply for a grant to kind of recoup what we're already spending for the privilege of living in New Jersey, I'd like to recoup money for something we know we already need.
That's a vote for paving.
That's a vote for paving.
I'll just reiterate, my belief that public and pedestrian safety is paramount. Yes, there may not be a lot of people walking the streets now as you might see otherwise. It's in large part the fact that there is no sidewalk there. It's a treacherous roadway. People don't want to risk their lives walking on a county road like that. I think we put a sidewalk in place there that would encourage walking, would encourage a more walkable community. Do other sidewalks need to be repaired in town? Yes, there's no argument there. And that's why we're working on that stretch through the TAP grant over on Fairmont here. But I'm a strong proponent of pedestrian safety and increasing the walkability of our town, especially on this county road here, and would encourage the last two remaining committee members to consider strongly putting the sidewalk proposal first.
I'd love to be the last, first time. Go ahead.
I think that when I weigh the fiscal argument about putting it toward paving versus the safety argument, I come down on the safety side. I personally have walked that stretch, and I personally, I strongly remember my being unsettled by the rough shoulder, the uneven grass, and the proximity of the passing cars. So I think that putting that project off indefinitely is a safety problem. So while hearing the concerns, I think I also feel that there also is support out there for this, and I think that the sidewalk is the way to go. So I support that.
Okay. I think that we should be listening more of the residents. Apparently, there's no opportunity for that, I guess. We have to vote tonight, is that?
Well,
is that
one
the reason?
typhoon, there is opportunity. The opportunity was tonight. John, we
Okay.
submitted letters to all the residences. We received commentary via email and here in public tonight. So it's not for lack of trying to get a hold of people.
No, I understand. And apparently we have 2 residents approached for it and 1 resident approached oppose it. And so I am going to go for it. I'm going to be for it. So again, I'm very concerned that if we're putting the residents at risk, which I wanted to vet that further, but again, if we can apply for it and still discuss on throughout the next meeting, or maybe 2 meetings, because that probably will be approved. It will take some time to get it approved. And right, so it's right, John,
there's no guarantee.
It may not even be
to
approved.
this to begin with.
It may not even be approved.
Well, if they do approve it, we're wasting money then, because if we're applying for something and we're not going to use the money, then that's not a good situation.
No, I think the intention is to
DOT.
apply for it, use it, but it's if we get the money for it, we don't just railroad it through. We talk to people.
Oh, no, absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
I help people understand the process when you do something like this. You don't just come in there with a bulldozer and say, "See you later."
No, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. But I'm just saying that there's going to be more, and if for a no vote later on, that's a little awkward, because we just applied for it, we received money, and then tell the DOT we're not interested.
No, I think the conversation tonight.
No, that's not what I'm at. What I'm asking is, we apply for it, but you're saying that what is your intention to build? You have to articulate that, I guess.
Oh,
in the
no,
application.
if we get a grant, we would work very closely, and we've done that on every single sidewalk project, is that, we start with the preliminary design, just some lines on a drawing, and we send that out to the residents, and we get that communication, we meet with the residents, it's...
My concern is this: what happens if there are 100 residents come here next week and say, "What the hell you guys are doing? We don't want a sidewalk." I mean, I want a sidewalk because I want residents to walk safe, and I want to create an more vibrant community. But is that the way to do it? If I'm putting my residents at risk, that's not the right thing to do. So I just don't know enough of what the residents are thinking. Apparently we have 66% for it, 33% against it. So at this point, if we have to vote on it, I'm for it.
Okay, fair enough. So is that your answer, John?
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may suggest, to be absolutely clear, there should be a motion specifically stating what the authorization is, and the motion could be something to the extent of that the township engineer is authorized to submit a NJDOT sidewalk grant application by October 4, 2018.
If I may, there was a resolution already on the agenda that was
It was
pulled,
part of the
so
consent
basically
agenda
we
last
authorized that resolution that was pulled at the
and it
You have the
says,
same resolution from last meeting?
from last week, and it says, I had
Yeah,
forgotten
yeah.
that, and it
Have
says
that ready.
sidewalk on it.
Yeah.
Why don't you just read that and have a,
Can I ask one more question?
Yep.
Are they entitled to offer us a percentage of what we ask for? If you put in a grant for 400,000 because that's what you estimate the project is, can they come back and say you're getting 198,000 or 225,000, even though we've already estimated the project to be 400?
I think for this one, I would request 250, which is the high end that you
Okay.
would request, and in all probability, they can come back with less.
Okay.
And they may come back with 200, they may come back with 100.
They may come back with, and at what point do we say that's too much for us to spend?
Well, certainly, it's not awkward to then say no to the DOT that, you know, we've asked for 250 and you only gave us 100, and that makes this project
Untenable, okay.
Well, that would be reasonable, but if we ask for 250 and then we come back and give us 200, you know, that's still a lot compared, when you look at the perspective of what typically people get, you know, that's a high number. To get 200 and then say no to that would be a little awkward. We do have, you know, we have a great relationship with them. We've been very successful with grants, and we make them look good too when we close out the grants quick, because that's their job, is to funnel the money and get the money spent, and we move projects fast, and you know, that's just awkward for them to have to you know, deal with a grant that's not accepted.
Thank you, John.
I
Greg?
just want to make one comment also. I just want to respond to Tim's comment about 100 people coming here. And to Karen's point, if there's only 20 homeowners, the 100 people that would come here, 80 of them would be for it, of the 100, because they don't live on that street. I'll be for it. I'll use it. We're all going to use it if it's there. But the people it impacts the most are the property owners on that street. And I think, you know, we have to be mindful of that. So whenever we make these decisions that affect the individual property owner, it's easy for us to sit here and force things on other people's property, but we have to think about those people. Because sure, I'm for all kinds of things that I want to do on your property, but we have to balance that and weigh that. So we've heard some people come here for it, some people are against it, really not a big, wide consensus of an opinion. So then we default and we're left to make the decision based off what we think is best for the community as a whole. But I think we should always be conscious of the people it directly impacts. And so, you know, and that was my original point about overwhelming need. When we don't seem to have a consensus, we should always, you know, it should always default to an overwhelming need. And I think there's some question about whether there's an overwhelming need or not. Thus, why I think there's always a need to pave.
Yeah, no,
'Cause it
I
just
hear
goes
what
in
you're saying,
cycles
Kevin,
and
and you know, when you have a committee, it's always nice to have consensus, but quite frankly, when you have opposing views, that's also a good thing as well, I would argue.
And we have to make a decision.
And
And
based on
that's
that,
why
and
we're
we
elected
make
to
a
make
decision.
tough decisions, good decision, you know, and, you know, tough decisions. And I think this is a tough decision, but one that I fully support. So with that, I'll ask Greg to read the resolution.
It's Resolution 2018-161, resolution of the Township Committee authorizing submittal of a grant application and execution of a grant contract with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the Fairmount Avenue Sidewalk Extension Project. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham formally approves the grant application for the above stated project. The project limits are on Fairmount Avenue, CR 638, from Southern Boulevard, CR 647, to Longwood Avenue, which is the municipal boundary with Chatham Borough. Be it further resolved that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to submit an electronic grant application identified as MA-2019- Fairmount Avenue Sidewalk Extension -001070 to the New Jersey Department of Transportation on behalf of the Township of Chatham. Be it further resolved that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the grant agreement on behalf of the Township of Chatham, and that their signature constitutes the acceptance of the terms and conditions of the grant agreement and approves the execution of the grant agreement.
is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded?
Mr. Salim?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes, with the confidence that John is going to continue to do what he has done, sending a letter to, as he has sent a letter to all his residents, but as he just described, working with them from the rough draft right through the final plans. So, yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Before I vote, I just want to, obviously my vote is no, but John, I just want to get confirmation from you again publicly that there will be no narrowing of Fairmont Road in the efforts to build this sidewalk.
Yeah, that's, that's all part of the design process, and that's absolutely when we go through the final, it's not just the residents, but it's also the committee getting input on the final design details.
But the point is, it's not about us giving input on the design and weaving around trees, it's about the narrowing of the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know that there's some sensitivity about Shunpike, and absolutely.
Right.
We want to make sure that we're not narrowing it, that we're providing adequate pedestrian safety, but then we're putting too much on for bikeways and not giving enough, safety for that perspective.
Right. No.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
I'm going to vote no, but I'd also like to say that my reason for doing so primarily is the fact that when we weigh fiscal matters in Chatham Township, we look at things that we know we're going to need to spend money on. And we know we're going to need to spend money on paving our roadways. As a result, this is money that we can recoup, as I said before, that we're already spending from our pretty modest municipal tax receipts in order to do something we know we need to do. And I'm certainly not opposed to walkability, and I'm certainly not opposed to sidewalks, but from a fiscal perspective, I believe it's more important to try and recoup money from the Department of Transportation for transportation. So I'm voting no.
And Mayor Ritter?
I will just say, in the interest of public safety and pedestrian safety, you cannot put a price on a life. So I say yes. Next item up for discussion is supplementing prohibition of smoking on public property. Thank you, John, by the way, for all your work and efforts.
Just one last comment, Mayor.
Yes.
The one suggestion that, I know I've made this suggestion in the past, is the document that we typically go back to and as part of the master plan is the walkway bikeway plan, and it isn't from 2009. And it is something, as we approach its 10-year anniversary, it is something that perhaps should be revisited with the planning board and the planner, and because that document really should be the document that we refer to regarding which roads that we're targeting for expansion, which creating priorities, and that allows the entire community to comment on a master plan and give that feedback. So it is something that the committee may want to budget for next year, is to focus on getting that plan. And then perhaps if that plan could be finalized before the next round for TAPs and safe routes to schools, we're not debating projects, we're turning right to that document, and here it's been vetted regarding that.
Well,
feedback.
forgive me if I'm wrong, but does the cost of our walkway bikeway plan come into effect, or is it about wellness? I mean, is it about connectivity and wellness and other ethereal kind of things? Or does it come into who's going to pay for this? Is that included in the master plan or the walkway bikeway? Who's going to pay for this?
It's a document, it's not regarding who's going to pay
Right,
for
I
it.
didn't think so.
And typically it does identify grant opportunities and things like that, but it identifies where there's a need. And the master plan is supposed to be the document that's ultimately the larger, shaping the municipality. Where do you see yourself in the future? And it is a document that really should be revisited and prioritized. And so, in the document that make these discussions simpler with regards to looking at the community as a whole versus just, sidewalk section here or there, just looking at it, good planning. So just a suggestion for next year.
Thank you, John, so noted. And I appreciate your work on this as well. Next item up for possible ordinance or resolution is, again, supplementing prohibition of smoking on public property. As we know, Governor Murphy is pursuing the ill-advised idea of legalizing recreational marijuana in the state. This ordinance amendment is amending Section 3-11 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Chatham to prohibit smoking of vaping and marijuana smoking in certain public places. This amendment clarifies and strengthens Section 3-11 and incorporates the definition of smoking in the New Jersey Smoke-Free Act. So again, this is prohibiting the smoking of marijuana should it become legalized in the state of New Jersey. It does not prohibit medical marijuana smoking, but recreational smoking, and also prohibits the use of vaping in public areas as well. Albert, I don't know if you have anything else you want to opine on?
So does this just take our previous ordinance one step from the vaping? I mean, you're really just adding vaping.
Exactly, adding vaping and marijuana.
Yeah, yeah.
Should it be, well, should it be legalized? So in other words, the idea is if marijuana becomes legalized in the state of New Jersey, you can't have you can't smoke it in public places, parks and whatnot, where children and such are around.
Or vaping.
Or vaping, yes.
Now, what about vaping, period? Was that, I can't remember if that was in the previous.
Vaping is not part of it, so this prohibits vaping as
that
well.
prohibits public smoking.
Yes.
Yeah, I got you.
And we know that vaping is
You may,
not a good thing. I'll leave it at that.
Say what you want, right?
we actually discussed this matter in our, during our Board of Health meeting, and Greg, would you speak to it?
Yes, the Board of Health addressed this issue at the last meeting, and the Board of Health supports clarifying the ordinance to include vaping as something that's prohibited. Because on the one hand, we felt that vaping was addressed in a language where it says "of the like," and I believe there's a state law that prohibits vaping where smoking is already prohibited. However, the Board of Health felt that clarifying that to include vaping was worthwhile.
Great, thank you. Any comments?
Also, as you know, Mayor Ritter, and I've expressed to you, Mr. Cruz, my hope is that this is as strong a language as we can come up with within the parameters of our existing laws. Given the mind-altering state, whether it's for medical purposes or for recreational purposes of marijuana, we wouldn't want that in any area in the public because of the express purpose of marijuana, that is to create an altered state. Anywhere where you smell or see tobacco smoke these days, all of a sudden everybody gets very emotional about it and they request you put it out and they create persona non grata. In the instance of actually introducing a smoke or a vapor that's designed to create an altered state, I would want this to be the strongest language possible. And if you're assuring me that this is the strongest language possible, I'm good with that. You know how I feel about that.
We
Your
discussed
Honor.
this with the Public Safety
Right.
Committee. I know Chief Miller supports it as well. Albert, do you have anything else you want to add? Any further discussion of introducing an ordinance to amending the ordinance? Mike, you have
This
a
would
question?
apply to our parks and what is our existing regulations regarding smoking tobacco in parks? Is there any restriction on that?
Well, part of what the ordinance does, it clarifies what can't be smoked, but also clarifies the places that can't be smoked. And so we're talking about any building or structure within 50 feet of a building or a structure in or off any municipally owned property, including but not limited to municipally owned park, playground, recreation area, athletic field, including parking lots. So it I think, covers most municipal facilities, if not all.
So it would add, current law forbids smoking tobacco in all those locations. This would specifically add vaping and marijuana smoking if marijuana became legal.
It treats cigarette smoke or smoke across the board in the same way, but this does not regulate medical marijuana.
Except for medical marijuana.
So you're saying that somebody can go to a kid's soccer game and smoke medical marijuana because of the Compassionate Act or whatever?
Wherever medical marijuana can be smoked now, it will be continued to be smoked in the future.
Including the front steps of the police station?
Wherever it's allowed to be smoked now, by state law, this ordinance can change.
We cannot change it.
So are we introducing this?
So we're going to introduce, we don't have the ordinance before us tonight.
No,
so
it's in your package.
Is it? I didn't see it in there. All right, fair enough. Then make a motion to introduce, or thank you, Kevin, 2018-19, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing Section 3-11.1, titled Smoking Prohibited, of Chapter 3, titled Police Regulations.
Did you say you're making the motion? Or are you asking
I
for a
am
motion?
asking for a motion to introduce this ordinance.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Mr. Salin?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
And this will be on for final adoption at the October 11th meeting.
Thank you very much. One other item along the vaping lines, it's not on this agenda, but I just want to give a heads up to the committee. I did have some other conversations with Albert and additional counsel to see whether or not we can prohibit the sale of vaping materials in the township itself. I'm not aware of any facility or company or organization that currently sells vaping materials, but we want to do what we can to prohibit it. I'm told we cannot prohibit the sale of vaping materials, but what we can do is introduce an ordinance that would basically prohibit the establishment of a commercial outlet that would sell exclusively vaping materials along those lines, is what I understand.
An amendment to the zoning ordinance that would prohibit the use, as a use, smoke shops and vaping shops.
So this is something I will bring up for discussion next meeting, unless you guys want to jump to an ordinance. Open it for conversation now, or would you want to table it to next meeting?
Would you be including things like a cigar shop? Does that, you'd be including a cigar shop?
Well, you could exclude a cigar shop versus, it doesn't have to be across the board, I assume, does it?
Well, that then
You could
gets a little
prohibit
bit-
hookah bars and vaping and other places like that.
Hookah bars are okay.
What did you say?
Hookah bars are okay.
He's a jerk.
That's something that we would have to further discuss, but the way I understand the ordinance to be proposed is to prohibit smoking shops, vaping shops, and a smoking shop would include a cigar shop or a cigar store, whatever they're called.
And would that would be for the sole purpose? So if a merchant of some variety, whether
would
it's a
exclu-
newspaper store or
Correct.
something?
They would exclude a convenience store, a supermarket.
They could sell smoking and vaping materials.
Correct. But you're prohibiting the use, not the use of smoking or the use of vaping, but the prohibiting the retail establishment.
Right.
Would that impact selling cigarettes as a convenience store or?
No, if you
No,
created a
it would be-
freestanding cigarette shop, you couldn't do it if this is what we're
If
talking
it's
about.
part of a smoking establishment, yes.
So just keep
Food
it
for
back in your
thought.
mind, food for thought for next meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Something that did come up at the last Board of Health meeting regarding this was the potential of having additional licensing for any stores that would sell vaping equipment. We're not aware of anyone, any of the establishments in town that do sell anything like that. The health inspector was going to check at the liquor stores to see if they carry anything vaping related, but that's one more avenue that's being considered for addressing this matter.
Great, thank you very much, Greg. Open it up for a hearing of citizens. We'll close out the hearing of citizens. Greg, you want to read Resolution 2018 P11?
I'm sorry, did you move to introduce the ordinance, Greg?
We did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Resolution 2018-P-11, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham and the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded. Whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Litigation in the matter of the Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan, docket number MRS-L-1659-15. Litigation, Fair Share Housing Center versus Township of Chatham, docket number MRS-L-000234-18. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the subject matter under discussion and in an event when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13. The committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Solon?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.